Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chantal. And then Fika, who's the data steward for the faculty, is going to talk about data management plans. Then we're going to have a little 10-minute break. And then Diana is going to talk about formulating budgets. And we'll leave some time at the end for discussion and questions. So if you remember from 2 weeks ago, I described a proposal very broadly as composed of two things. One, a compliance piece and an X piece. And we'll be doing some more X in the next two sessions. But this session is focused on the compliance piece, which includes formatting requirements and things like that. We'll go through all of that. I was just working on a grant with someone, and these are some of the formatting requirements, right? This is also important aspects of compliance, but it's not all of compliance. It's not all of the elements of compliance that you need to consider. So you're also thinking about things like the budget, obviously, the data management plan, things like embedding guarantees, which would guarantee you employment, possibly a permanent contract if you were to get a grant, ethics statements, diversity statements, your CV, right? A publication list, work samples or a portfolio, depending on the kind of thing you're applying for, letters of recommendation, letters of support. So these are all of the sort of a cluster of things that sort of surround the scientific content. But, you know, like I said last time, each of these you can think of as kind of equally important, right, to the proposal as a whole, even though you might spend more time on the content of the proposal itself. Why do you have to do these things? Like, why do we have to bother, right? One reason is because you want to be a good institutional citizen. Another reason is because you want to be a good academic citizen. And then there are also specifically legal requirements about being a good EU citizen. Some of these things, you know, some of these aspects of compliance, if you don't do them, really the only penalty that you suffer is that you don't get the grant, right? Some of them, however, others, if you're found to be in violation of them, they can trigger, you know, investigations or citations or something like that. So it's actually, you know, a little more serious. And just really quickly, some aspects of compliance documents. How are they made? Who makes them, and when are they made in the process? So how are they made? Most important point is you should not be composing these de novo on your own. You can ask around for examples, and you can copy or steal things that other people use. You know, this is an informal understanding, but the normal prescription against plagiarism, right, that governs other aspects of our intellectual lives, don't operate here. In particular, you know, there's a kind of institutional boilerplate. So it's just the same chunk of text that circulates around, and everyone can use it in their proposals. So forms of boilerplate that exist, descriptions of the university, 400, 500 word descriptions of what Maastricht University is. You know, it's kind of descriptive, but it's kind of markety as well. But it definitely highlights, you know, some of the high points of, you know, saying, well, why is this proposal, why is Maastricht competitive in this larger realm? Also descriptions of the faculty and resources that the faculty can offer to the specific project. Now, where do these boilerplate things exist? Someday, I hope that they'll exist on the internet, and you would just be able to go out and reach it and find it on your own and then modify it for your own purposes. But for now, if you go looking for something, just ask me if you need it. And there may be some things where you go, I don't know if I'm supposed to write this or if there's some boilerplate. Again, if you have any doubts, just go ahead and ask. Then there are things like, you know, your CV, list of publications, or a portfolio. You should always keep a rolling file of that. This is something that I tend to not be very good at doing. So I am always like finding myself updating my CV. I should have a better job of, you know, because the stuff doesn't really change all that much, but I should be able to have a rolling file and then freeze it at a certain point and then import it into the proposal. Then, you know, I think you are also, it's useful to keep lists of names of people who might be willing to informally review your proposal before it goes out, people who might, you know, review, might write letters for you, and even people who might be collaborators. And it's good to keep a list, because if you're working very quickly or you have a lot of deadlines, it's easy to have names fall off your radar, and you don't want to do that. That shouldn't be there. How are they made? There are also some guides that will walk you through assembling the text. There's a very good one that the European Commission offers for an ethics self-assessment that you can use. For gender and diversity statements, I helped devise one that walks researchers through elements of diversity, elements of gender specifically, but diversity more broadly, and where you can put those in proposals and what elements of diversity you should mention. And then there is a data management tool and template specifically for the university. Fika will talk about that in a bit, but that's a very good way of assembling the basic elements of the data management tool. So again, you're not, you know, operating in a vacuum here. There's lots of stuff that can help you achieve this. Along with that, there's some questions that you should ask. And I guess these are questions that we all kind of ask ourselves in some way in our daily lives, right? But, you know, when we encounter a rule or when we encounter something in a procedure, the first question really is, what is the rule, right? But the next question is, who makes the rule? So if you, and that's an important question to ask, because who makes the rule offers you some flexibility. If it's the European Commission that makes the rule, well, you're not going to get around it, right? You pretty much have to follow it. But if it's a faculty rule, then there's the possibility of coming to some sort of negotiated understanding with someone, right? Perhaps the answer to number 3, who enforces the rule, right? And often when you ask 2 and 3, that opens a back door regarding how you can be in compliance and still not be following the rule specifically. And maybe Diana could talk about that a little bit as well. Who makes this stuff? Who makes these compliance documents? You do mainly, or your team if it's a team, but you know, you collaborate with a bunch of people who are here at the faculty. So Diana, Fika, myself, when it comes to ethics statements or diversity statements, I'm happy to help. Embedding guarantees, I can help with that. And approval. So the approval comes from the dean, and I'm helping to organize that. Sometimes you need approval from the executive board, and you need to make sure that your department head and your line manager knows that you are applying for something and that you have the clearance to be able to do that. One interesting fact about academic life, or at least the academic culture that I come from, which is that you can write your own recommendation letters. It might be a little shocking to discover that, but if you need a letter, you're asking typically someone who is probably pretty busy. And when you make the request, hey, could you give me a letter? You should always offer, I'd be happy to supply you with some sample text or something like that, just to seed their own writing process. They might say, I don't need that, but it doesn't hurt. Also, the timing of this is important because I don't address recommendation letters in number 3 here, but typically it's considered impolite to ask someone for a recommendation letter less than 2 weeks before a deadline, because people have tons of deadlines of their own, and they're trying to avoid deadlines, not gather more of them. So do the polite thing. And also, if you're asking for a letter or a support letter, it won't be the only time that you do that. So you don't want to make someone mad and make them less willing to write you a nice letter the next time around. When are they made? So, the budget, as soon as possible, right? Deanna will talk about that. And in parallel with working on your scientific content. I find sometimes that people work on the content first and then they do the budget later, but the two things are really in relationship with each other, so they should be worked on in parallel. The data management plan, similarly, Fika will talk about timing and project timeline. An ethics statement, it often seems like it's easier to do that after you have the content, so you really know all of the aspects of your methodology or the people that you're and the data that you're going to be collecting. So after the content is more or less nailed down, that's a good time to write ethics statements. Diversity statements, the same thing, often for the same reasons. Dean's approval, now this is a stricter deadline, and it's something that comes up very close to a submission date, but you would be trying to get the Dean's approval, which includes an official letter sometimes, 3 working days before the deadline or 3 working days before when you plan to submit. And it seems like the Dean has started to become more strict about that expectation. So you don't want to be the person that he says no to. I mean, of course, things in life happen and we understand that, but in general, this is the expectation. And so those are some general aspects of compliance documents in general that I wanted to present and tell you about. If you have any questions, why don't you save them until the very, very end, because also, there'll be 2 presentations here where people might, where Fika or Deanna might actually answer those questions for you. So just hold the questions to the end if you don't mind, or stick them in the chat if you're worried about forgetting them. Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing now and switch things over to Fika.
Okay, thank you. I will try to share my screen. Can you all see this? Okay, perfect. So I'm Fika, I'm the data steward of the law faculty, and I'm also a research data management specialist at the university library, where we develop trainings, tools, and where we communicate about research data management. So today I will give you a short introduction into what research data management is and into the data management plan. So for my presentation, I will talk about a motivation for research data management. I will give you some definitions. I will go into the advantages of the data management plan, when to write the data management plan. I will quickly show you the data management plan tool and the template of Maastricht University. And then I will give some additional information and how to contact us. So a first important motivation for research data management is to make your data reusable. And for this, I like to make the comparison with the economy. So in the past, we took the raw materials, we made the products, and then we disposed the products. But now we are moving towards a more circular model where the products are not disposed anymore, but where they are recycled. And we can say the same for science. So in the past, we generated or collected our data, we did our analysis, we published about our findings, and then we disposed the data, never to be used again. But of course, this is not sustainable. And also here we would like to reuse or recycle the data. So we want to transition to sustainable science. But of course, this is not the only motivation for research data management. It's also important to protect, for example, your participants. It's also important to make your research reproducible and to be transparent about your research. And it also has a lot of benefits because it can increase your impact and visibility, because data sets can be cited to, for example. Then some definitions. What is research data? Simply said, it's all the information that is derived of scientific processes, and it can come in many forms. So here in the law faculty, we often see research data in the form of interview recordings or transcription, in the form of questionnaires or data about public archives and online platforms and so on. Then research data management is how you handle, organize, and structure your research data during the research process. So it's about how you will create the data, where you will store the data, how you will share the data with your collaborators, how you will preserve the data, because data underlying a publication should be preserved for 10 years after the final publication that is based on the data. And it's about how you will publish your data. Research data management is, like Michael said, or having a good research data management strategy is just being part of being a good academic citizen and institutional citizen. Then FAIR, that's something that you often hear when we talk about research data management, is an acronym for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Basically, it's a set of principles to define best practices for research data management to facilitate the discovery and the reuse of data, both by humans and by machines. FAIR is a very important part of the open science movement towards reproducible and transparent science. And here it's very important to note that FAIR means it's not the same as open. So it's a part of open science, but more in the sense of transparent science and not in the sense of open data sets, because often you will collect sensitive data like personal data and you can just not make them openly or publicly available, but you can still make your data set fair. Then the data management plan. It's a tool that provides a framework for how you will handle your data material, both during and after the research project. It's very important that this data management plan is a living document. This means that it will change together with the needs of your project, and that it should always reflect the current status of your project. And then in the end, the final version of your data management plan should be a true representation of how you handled your research data during the project and how you will handle it after the project. So it's not so that everything that you put in the first version of your data management plan is set in stone. You can still make changes as your project will change as well. A data management plan is not mandatory in the university, but funders often require a data management plan, and even if it's not required, it's always highly recommended. Then some advantages of a data management plan. It will save you a lot of time and headache because you will have to think about the tools that you will use, the resources that you need, the experience that you need before you actually start collecting the data. So you will already see some possible problems before you start your project, and you can already work around it. For example, in the data management plan, you will talk or you will describe whether you also will reuse the data. So then you know that if you ask informed consent from your participants, that if you want to reuse the data, that you also have to ask informed consent for or their consent for the reuse and the sharing of the data. And the second advantage is that it will eliminate data loss, because you will have to think about where you will store the data and how the data will be backed. And then we can also advise you, for example, to use the network drives of the university, because there will be automatic backups. Then it will help prepare your data for archival so that they can be preserved for 10 years after your research project. And it will facilitate how you will make your data fair, because a large part of the data management plan templates always focus on how you will make your data findable, who will get access to your data, how will you make your data set interoperable. For example, how will you or which formats will you use to store your data? And in the end, how will you make them available for reuse, and which license will you choose? It also allows for easy project management, because a lot of project-related info can be found in the data management plan. And then finally, it will show accountability, because by filling in a data management plan, you will show your institution and your funder and also your collaborators that you have a serious approach about research data management. Then who should write the data management plan? Of course, you should write it, because it's your data, and the data management plan will help you to manage your data for your use. But of course, you are not alone. You also will not do your research alone. There might be a lot of members in the team that can also help you fill out the data management plan. And of course, there is me, the data steward, who is also happy to guide you through the data management plan, review the data management plan, and give feedback. Then when do you have to write a data management plan? As you know, there are several phases in the research project, and the data management plan is a very important part of the planning phase. So if you have to write a proposal, often you will already have to think about data management, because there might be a data management section that is part of the proposal. And there you will have to describe if you will collect data, where you will store the data, how you will preserve and archive the data, how you will make the data fair. Then after you have obtained funding and before you actually start collecting the data, you have to finish your data management plan, or at least the first version. And the data management plan will then be a more detailed version of the data management section. At Maastricht University, we have a tool available to write a data management plan, and there you can also find the template of Maastricht University. And this template has been approved by ZonMW and NWO, so two major Dutch funders. And here you, in the slides, you also find the link to this tool. On this slide, you see how what you find in the Maastricht University template. So you can add your contributors. You can find more information about the template in the plan overview tab. Then in the Write Plan tab, you will actually write your data management plan. You can share your data management plan within the tool with your collaborators or with the data steward. And of course, you can download the data management plan. The data management plan itself is built out of 5 sections. So first there is a section with general information where you will explain who will do the research, where will the research take place, will you apply for ethical approval, and so on. Then there is a big part about legislation, and that will mainly be about personal data and the GDPR. Then there is a part about data preparation and collection, so the type of data that you will collect, how you will collect the data, and so on. And section about data processing and analysis is, for example, where you will store the data, how you will securely share your data with your collaborators. And then finally, there is a section about data archiving and open access. And this will also focus on these FAIR principles and how you will make your data findable, which archive you will use to register and store your data, and so on. Here you see an example of a question in the data management plan tool. It's just to show you that it's not only open questions. So there are also a lot of multiple choice or multiple option questions. And what's very interesting in our own template is that we have guidance with very relevant information and important links. And that will also help you find an answer to the specific questions. And then I only want to tell you that there are also a lot of research data management trainings available at Maastricht University, and also some events. So we have an introduction course to research data management where we will go more in detail about storage infrastructure here available at Maastricht University, about the repositories that are available, about FAIR principles and data management plan, and so on. And then there are also 2 specific courses about the FAIR principles. So we have a FAIR Essentials course and a FAIR for qualitative data course, which is very interesting for people in the humanities and the social sciences. And then finally, the open science community also regularly organizes FAIR coffee lectures where there are researchers who show their approach towards FAIR data, so how they make their data FAIR. Then a lot of information about research data management can also be found on the research data management portal of the university library. And of course, if you have questions, you can always contact me, or you can contact me and Jean-Paul, the information manager, via the email address that is presented here. He is responsible for GDPR, so a lot of questions about data management and GDPR can be directed towards this email address. And that's it for me. So if there are questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Fika, for that. I had budgeted you for 30 minutes and you said everything so efficiently and great. Does anybody have any questions? Is anyone working on a project right now? Go ahead, Marlou.
Hey, Fika, I have a question for you. I'm working with data which was originally stored at Maastricht University, and now it is moved, the database is moved to another university or another institution. if I make my data management plan, am I also responsible for the storage there? Or so in general, the question is what can you do with regard to the data management plan if the information and the data you're working with is partially your own? So for instance, I'm also doing interviews, so I have interview recording and interview transcriptions in the last stage of my research, but I'm still working with original data, which is not my own data. I only have access to it, but it is stored at a different institution. Should I include it in a data management plan, or what is the way to?
Yeah, if you reuse your data, it's important that you of course have the approval to reuse the data. That's something to think about. And then for storage, it's just very important that it's safely stored and securely stored. So whether that is at the other university or at Maastricht University, it doesn't really matter, but it's very important that they are shared safely and stored safely. And that you have access, of course, to the data set, and that only the appropriate people have access to the data set.
Okay, so I just include in my data management plan, and then I write something about that it is stored there in a safe way, and I don't have to provide a lot of information on how it is done if I don't know it exactly.
Yeah, or you can ask there, or you can find the information there maybe. How it is stored and how it's backed up and so on. But if you are writing a data management plan, you can always send it to me, and I will also look into it.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much.
Fika, I have a question about deleting data.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a safe way to delete data, or does that could you mention that in a data management plan? And
yeah, that's a good question, but that's definitely not part of the data management plan. So there is no question about how you will delete the data. Most questions are about how you will preserve the data and how you will select the data for preservation. But deletion, yeah, that's a good question. That's something to think about.
Do you ever encounter people who say, well, I don't have to worry about storing the data because I'm just going to delete it, and once I've done my analysis?
Yeah, to be honest, you are the first one who mentions this as something to look into. Yeah.
I have another question too. I mean, and Mary Lou's question about moving between institutions, but how much do sort of expectations around data management best practices differ from university to university, within the Netherlands or within Europe?
Yeah, I don't think that there are a lot of differences because, for example, these FAIR principles, it's something that is always used in all universities, in all templates of data management plans. So there is not really a lot of differences, but for example, for preservation of the data, that can differ from university to university or from discipline to discipline. So how long you will have to preserve the data, and of course, yeah, which are the safe options to store the data, or which are good repositories that are advised. That's also something that differs from institutions to institution, because we, for example, have our own repository that we will always advise to use, and other institutions have their own, have other repositories.
Great, yeah, thank you.
Are there any more questions? No? Yeah, if you start writing your data management plan, if you cannot find the template, if you have specific questions, you can always contact me.
What is the portal for?
The portal contains a guide, so it's all information about everything research data management related, with links to Maastricht University templates, but it's also, for example, on the RDM support webpage, you will find the different courses that are available, the different tools that are available, the services, for example, the data stewardship services and so on. And then there is also a lot of information about FAIR data and the community for data-driven insights.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions? If there aren't any other questions, I propose that we move swiftly to a 10-minute break and maybe come back at 45. That's not a 10-minute break, but come back at 45, and then we'll hear from Diana about budgets. Okay. All right. I'll see everyone in 45. Okay, I think we're ready to get started here. People don't have the cameras on, so it's hard for me to tell.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Alice. Alice. Oh, and there's Diana. Oh, two Dianas. How?
We don't even look like each other, Michael. But I know Diana. She's working on a project.
So I give you the floor, Diana.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody see my screen that I see? Okay, well, I'm going to talk to you today about the administration and the financial budget that comes with proposal and seeking external funding for other research, trainings, or events. Now, Michael asked me to introduce myself shortly, so I will. First of all, I'm Diana. I'm nearly 54 years old. I'm Belgian and I live in Belgium. I'm married to Patrick and he's an ICT consultant. I have two sons. The oldest is doing his PhD and the youngest is trying to join the police forces. I have been working at Maastricht University at this faculty in this position for 17 years now. Before I was an interpreter, specialized in business and economics, and later I did a master on business administration. I used to work for about 15 years for two private American companies, and then I saw the light and I joined Maastricht University, which until today was a very good choice. Now, what is external funding? I think Michael already explained in the previous training that we had, but I'm going to do this again a bit more to the point when it comes to what we are seeking finances for. So it's a grant and it's a financial subsidy that we receive from third parties to help you to conduct your research, organize training, or create new teaching modules or organize events. The granting organization providing you this financial grant will set the rules and the regulations for doing so. So it's not that you apply for a grant and then can go ahead just like that. No, there are in the proposal phase a lot of rules and regulation, a lot of requirements, and once granted, you will also have to meet the requirements, the reporting requests, everything that comes with it. You don't get money for nothing. Now, of course, this granting organization would like to see some deliverables and some outcomes. And in this faculty, in this university, you can, well, go for whatever grant you would like, sign in on every call you would like, but it has to meet the Dutch Code of Conduct on scientific research. That is very important, otherwise our dean will not accept you to apply for a grant. Now, the most important granting organizations in our faculty are, of course, the European Commission. The Horizon Europe is starting soon, so all calls from Horizon Europe will hopefully you will submit a lot and we will be successful. There's the Erasmus Plus call, which contains ITNs, incoming fellowships, Marie Curie, Jean Monnet, joint doctorates, all those kind of grants. The DGs, we mostly apply for DG Justice or DG Governance. And then there's the framework contracts within the European Commission. Then there is NWO, there is the open competition, the Vernieuwing Impulse, which is better known as Veni Vidi Vici, and the ORC. Of course, there's a lot more, but these are the main calls that we apply for. Then there are the public ministries, which is Safety and Security, Justice Department, Foreign Affairs Department, and the Department of Education, Culture and Science. Then there are the calls from Interreg, which are led by the province of Limburg for our region. And there are the smaller grants that SWOL provides, and that is mostly for some interdisciplinary organization of events. And it's, well, quite easy to obtain a small amount, a small subsidy from SWOL if you have any plans for organizing an event. What are the best practices in the proposal phase? It's very important that you inform your departmental head or your supervisor about your plans to submit a proposal, because you have some tasks within your department, and submitting a proposal will take a lot of your time. But should the proposal be granted, it will take even more of your time. So your departmental head must know that you will be applying and must in fact agree to you applying. Don't worry, they 100% will, but just to be on the safe side, always inform your departmental head. Then the second step to do is contact the supporting staff. It's at the first stage of the proposal phase, it's Michael and myself. Why? Because sometimes you have an idea, but you haven't found the right call. Then Michael can help. Or you have the call, but you would like to find out some more specific details. Then again, Michael can help, and also I can help you to understand what is requested by that call. Very important is that you read and share the call. It's not enough to have an idea. Your idea must fit in the call. You must understand what is requested and required. Calls have specific requirements. You need to be eligible. Also, if you work with a research group, if you form what we call a consortium or a partnership with other institutes, either within Maastricht University or external universities, make sure that all partners, all co-beneficiaries are eligible. Share your thoughts, wishes, and worries upfront and in time, so that we can counter them, that we can find solutions, that we can help you to write your proposal in, well, the best circumstances. Set yourself deadlines and prepare a work schedule. There's a lot to do when writing a proposal. So also, if you work with other partners, with other researchers, make sure that people have deadlines. There's a lot of information that needs to be gathered. There's a lot of things to be written down. So delegate tasks. Don't think it's all on you. There's a lot of information already available. Make sure you get it. Don't spend time in seeking information that is already available. Now, what I have available for you and what will relieve you on the administrative burden is the declaration of honors, the financial capacity declarations, the declaration on the legal entity, the financial identification form, the letters of mandates, the declarations of embedding your research, declarations on matching requirements, and I will help you with the budget. The things you are responsible for are the CVs, a list of your publication, and an overview of research, which either is within the same topic or within the same call. Now, the last thing, that overview of research, of projects, I can also help you with and provide you with some research information from colleagues within our faculty or within the university. So everything that I have highlighted here in red, you don't need to find out, you don't need to look, you just send an email, we will send you the forms. duly dated, duly completed, duly signed. Don't spend your time on that kind of standard declaration and statements. Now, as I told you before, if you join a consortium either as a co-beneficiary or as a coordinator, make sure that the consortium is eligible. There are three sorts of consortia, or well, consortia are composed of three kinds of beneficiaries. You have co-beneficiaries, so they have the same rights and obligations and are entitled to receive part of the funding. Then there are associate partners. They have no right to financial compensation. And then there are subcontractors. These are not full beneficiaries, but these are parties who just take part in a small part of your proposal. You need to identify those categories because each party will need to provide you with certain documents. And depending on the category, they need to provide other documents. These documents must be signed by their legal representative. In some institute that takes quite some time. So make sure that you know, well, at least 2 weeks before deadline, which partner needs to provide which document, and make sure that they know that they will be able to deliver. Otherwise, you cannot submit your proposal if you do not have full set of documents. So provide the information to all parties, request input, whether that is scientific input, administrative input, financial input. Make sure the people meet your deadlines. And as I said before, set the deadlines, both internally in the faculty, to me, to Michael, to yourself, but also to externals that you work with. It's important that people know that at a certain point, it must be finished. You can't continue of changing and adding and rewriting and rebudgeting. At a certain point, it must be done. So the budget. Now, each granting organization has a format. We don't need to do that in Excel. Every granting organization will provide a budget format to complete. It is important that you know upfront which costs are eligible and which are not eligible. And as Michael pointed out in the start of this presentation, your contents is linked to the budget and vice versa. So they will read your proposal. And if you, for example, would say that you will go on a field research trip for 3 months to the USA, the granting organization will need to see a budget for 3 months stay in the USA, doing research, traveling, return travel. So content and budget are linked. Keep that in mind. Now the budget is composed of several headings: personnel costs, non-personnel or material costs, overheads, what other people call indirect costs. And if we're unlucky, we do have matching requirements. I will go into each of those categories now. Now, the personnel costs. Personnel costs are scientific staff. That could be a PhD, researchers at all levels, postdoctoral researchers, professors, no matter what, academic staff. Below each line, I put this, well, not, but under scientific staff, just that you can have an idea of what we can budget for. A PhD is scaled in scale 27.0 as a starting scale. A researcher 4 is scaled 10.04. And a postdoctoral starting postdoctoral researcher 11.0. These are the scales that are set by the VSNU. So those are the tables that we use. We always use real salaries. Full cost, that means both employees and employers charges. So it's a gross salary. You can also budget for non-scientific staff. You can budget secretaries, engineers, data analysts, whatever you need. You can budget student assistants. These are most of the time budgeted, well, not budgeted, employed via Interim, and you can choose for a flex or a non-flex contract. You can budget project secretaries, managers, whatever you need to carry out your research proposal. The budget calculation of staff is done on an hourly, daily, or monthly rate. That depends on the call. As I said, it's based on real and full salary costs as per the VSNU salary tables, or based on the fixed amount set by the granting organization. For instance, under the Joe Monet key activity call, they put fixed daily rates per staff category. That comes with the call, so there's nothing we can do about that. That is why I always say just make sure that you understand the call and that you know the requirements, but also what is possible under a specific call. Then there are the non-personnel costs, and I just took the most important headings, which are, of course, travel and subsistence. I hope we can travel again as from this moment on, that you can discover the world and take your research worldwide. So I also here in very small letters put in what we use as an average Benelux travel is, it's always return travel, door to door. Is max 150 euro per person, travel within the EU 450 per person, non-EU travel up to 1,500. Staying in a hotel, including breakfast, would be 150 per person per night. There are more expensive, there are cheaper rates. These are averages which we use to create a budget. Then we also budget most of the time participation fees so that you can go and attend conferences, workshops, presentations, seminars, follow courses, whatever you need to build your career and to become a better researcher thanks to the grant. So we use an average fee between 500 and 750 per person. We budget field work, and depending on the countries and the duration of your stay, we would say that it's 1,150 euros per person per month's stay. We budget literature and databases if necessary. We publish, of course, your publication costs, the open access, the editing, language corrections. We budget data management, that is if you would like special storage because there is some secured information, ethical reports that you might need to conduct, the VRE, the virtual reality environment. Those are the things that you might also need. And then we budget the organization of events, which falls under dissemination output, very important to most granting organization. And that depends really on the number of days and the number of participants and speakers. I put down some more detailed information about the catering, about meeting facilities, so that you have an idea what all comes with the organization of an event. And then we also budget for a website creation and the maintenance of the website, as well as social media. So that is what the budget is composed of. Another part of the budget, which is a fixed percentage, is the overhead or the indirect cost. These cover housing, overall support, postal charges, office supplies, sometimes printing costs. And most of the time, it is a certain percentage within your call. NWO does not allow to budget for overheads. And Horizon Europe allows you to budget 25% of your total budget is so on top of budget, staff and non-staff costs, there's a 25% overhead available by Horizon Europe. For instance, DG Justice only allows a 7% overhead charge. The faculty's overhead is set at 20%. So for every 100 euro you spend, the cost for the faculty would be 120 euro. That's how you should look at it. And that comes with you having an office, it needs heating, you have ICT support, the secretaries are there, the reception are there. You need to, well, everything that's not part of or a specific part of your research falls under overhead. Fieke falls under the overhead, Michael falls under overhead, I fall under the overhead. So that's what the overhead covers at our faculty. Should your proposal be granted, it becomes a project. And I just wanted to let you know that our faculty always charges 20% overhead on external income. So even if it's not in your budget, the faculty would still charge to cover faculty overheads. And then this is the least popular part. There's the matching requirement in some calls, which means that you can have a budget of, let's say, 100,000 euro, and then the granting organization says, well, that's fine. Of that 100,000 euro, we will pay, or we will grant 90%. And the other 10% is financed by your own institute. So that means that if your research would cost 100,000 euros, the commission, for example, would pay 90,000, and the faculty will have to pay the additional 10. That is always the case within calls like Jean Monnet, DG Justice, and WO does not require matching. And if your budget exceeds the available allowance, then also matching is required. If you require matching, so if the faculty needs to contribute out of its own pocket a specific percentage or amount to cover your full research, you need to follow a certain internal procedure, which means that I will draft a budget for you, and once you agree with the budget, we will send the budget to your departmental head. And when they agree to the matching, then it will go to the director. And if the director agrees to the matching requirements, then you can submit. It's a procedure that we must follow, because otherwise the faculty would be paying out of pocket money without any limits. So we just need to know what we assign for, what we apply for. Now, how can you start with proposal and getting me in? You sent me a link to the call that you would like to propose. Then we will meet and discuss what your plans are, what your wishes are, and I will draft you a start budget. And throughout the proposal phase, we will update and fine-tune that budget, meeting your requirements and meeting your proposal. And once you are fine with your proposal and we are fine with the budget, then the proposal title and a summary of the proposal together with the budget go to the dean, and he will agree. That's the procedure. And as I said, if your budget exceeds the maximum grant allowance and we need to pay out of pocket money, then we need to ask approval of the departmental head and of the director before it can go to the dean. Now, I would like to inform you about the proposal versus the grant status in this faculty. And in 2020, we submitted 121 proposals, of which 60 were granted, and they were worth 2.68 million. In 2021, we submitted 120 proposals, only 37 were granted, but it was nearly for the same amount, which means that we got in some very, very huge amounts of funding. But that's the way it works. Sometimes you have more, sometimes you have less. Sometimes you're more successful, sometimes you're less successful. In average, I have about 50 external projects that I support, because once your proposal gets granted, you end up with me again, as I am also your project consultant, which means that you should focus on the content and on your research, and I focus on everything that is not content and not research. The most successful grants are EU grants, Horizon 2020, Erasmus DGs, grants with the ministries, and Interreg. Of course, there are a lot of small grants where people get a couple of €1,000 to write an advice or to participate in a study. I did not take those into account because they're for very limited period. Sometimes it's like a month's time or 2 weeks time, and you get €1,000, €500. So I did not list those up in this overview, but I just wanted to share the figures with you. And that's what it is for now. I was wondering if you have any questions or comments. I know it's a lot of information.
I have a question, which is maybe not strictly related to budget, but that popped up in my head also after an email exchange with Michael. One of my problems is that when I see, for example, Michael forwarded to me this grant call that required an application from a group, so not for an individual. And how would I, for example, join a group that is already preparing a call where I could provide, especially if it's interdisciplinary like this call, so they will comprise not just of legal experts, but doctors and so on. So is there a way for me to join a group that's already there, or how would I find
was it the EU grant?
No, it's I can forward it to you. It's Dutch. I can post a link here. No, it's from the Ministry of Dutch Ministry of Health.
And you don't know if there was already a network applying?
How would I know this? This is also my question.
Well,
how would I know?
That's what, because if it's from within an EU call, you can enter the EU portal and then you can find.
Yeah, that I know, but
yes,
for example,
but with the ministries, you don't. Okay. So which means that if you would like to apply, you would need to look or create your own network, asking academics at Randwijk, the medical department, to join, or then. But yeah, I understand that if you're young, then it's difficult. But yeah, that is a bit, yeah, how it works. I mean, you need to, the more often you apply, the broader your network will become. So what you could do is that Michael or myself, that we look to contact the FHML granting or funding advisor, and that we seek whether they are aware of any body being involved in this application, and then bring them in touch with you.
Okay, for this one it will be too late, but for the future, yeah, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So outside the EU, there are not many tools available within other calls to find existing networks. Unless they contact you, you will need to sort of find your own and create your own network. It's only the Commission who has this tool available. But yeah, what you could also do, but I need to look up the email. There is this Dutch research network link that you can join, and where then people sometimes post like, you know, I'm interested in applying under this call. Is anybody interested? That is a way. I don't know if there's much response to that, because yeah, I'm not involved in that part of the research, but I will find the link because I have it somewhere, and then I forward it to you.
Thank you.
Alice, do you have contacts over at FHML at all?
No.
Do you know by any chance our Professor Wilma Deus? Okay, she is a, well, I don't know exactly what she is. She's a forensic doctor. I know what she is, but I can't explain very well because I know she has a medical background. She does forensic research, and she's now involved in law. So she knows both sides. I know she's involved in the medical center in Amsterdam, but I know she also has her contacts at FHML. So maybe you can get in touch with her.
Yes, could you please write their name on the chat?
Yeah,
'Cause
I
my
will.
Dutch is
Yeah, yeah,
very-
I will write a name on.
That would be great.
And I could also share some names of people who, one, I know are working in digitization, two, people who are working in ethics, and you do artificial intelligence, correct?
Yeah, and criminal law, yeah.
Yeah, ethics and AI. Yeah, and just generally sort of AI in medical contexts, you know, as medical devices. So I can give you names of people.
That would be great, yeah. I also have a background as working as a lawyer in that field, not specifically in criminal law, so it's also something that I've been interested in. But it's hard for me to find a network. That's the hardest thing. So
yeah, it's really hard. I mean, the old-fashioned way, which was to just go to the parties, has kind of been taken away from us.
Yeah,
right?
it's hard also for law people to find a network with not law people. That's also a struggle, because I can find connections in the law faculty, but for this kind of project, for example, that you forward to me, I would need connections with people from different fields, and that I have no idea how to make a network with that.
Yeah.
with those people.
We do have some close collaboration with people from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, VASOS, as well as IDS, which is the Engineering and Data Center, as well as BIS, which comes from SBE. So on several levels, we work together with those three interdisciplinary parties, because they're very much linked to, and with the psychologists. And that has to do with the law and psychology. But yeah.
Are you going to the Women in Data Science conference?
No, I don't think so. I saw that you mentioned it before. I will Google it. I wrote it down.
I would definitely recommend, you know, going to that, especially if you're working, you know, in and around AI. There will be other people who work in AI there, both from other parts of, you know, the university, but also from industry. So
Thanks.
Who at our faculty, Caroline Kaufman also worked on AI. So maybe she has some people in her network that you can that she can share with you, or that she can put you in touch with.
yeah,
Okay.
great opportunities there. I had to step away for a second. Diana, were you answering questions that were still about budgets, or were we
No,
talking about things in general?
just in general. No, no
Yeah.
questions about budget so far. Wait till they have to draft the budget, Michael.
You made
It comes automatically.
What are, but Tiana, you know, what are some things that typically in your experience, maybe you talked about this, but you know, kind of trip people up
What do
when
you mean?
when they come to you, or trip people up when they think about budgets?
I don't think they sometimes realize how expensive staff is, because they see their gross salaries, but a gross salary is not a salary cost. So if they then need to raise a budget, they think, oh, my gross salary is for 2,700 euros. And then the budget is 4,500 euros, which of course has an enormous impact on the budget and on the plans that they sometimes have. In addition to that, of course, also organizing events. You know, if you want to have people attending events and you want to pay for them, for their flights and their stays, and having a lot of people flying in and having a lot of people staying overnight, before you know it, your event is 25,000 euros worth. So that sometimes, especially the first time that they do a budget like that. But most of the times, yeah, you try to, you know, I always show them the figures and how we calculate them. And but yeah, if somebody says you get 500,000 euros and they think, oh, huge. But yeah, it's just you as you spend it, of course. So yeah, sometimes it's a bit of, and what also is, especially if you have a network, like Alice, if she would like to apply and she has other people outside of the faculty participating, to get all the information, to get the fees, to get the documents, it's always a struggle. I experience that time after time again. It's so difficult to get people on track and to make sure that they deliver in time. So that's why I always say to people, start asking, inform them, tell them what you need. Make sure that everybody is prepared. Don't wait for the last minute, because you will not be able.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that view. I've definitely seen people make the salary mistake.
Yeah. Also, what also happens is that if you apply for a grant at this point in time with a start date sometime next year, you might have a automatic salary increase of a scale, CAO increase. People do not take that into account. We take that into account because we have a tool, a Maastricht University tool, that is set up to calculate that kind of salary increases over the years. So, you know, it's not enough to take the salary you have at this time, but you also need to, if your proposal is, or if your project would last 5 years, then you need to take into account your salary over the next 5 years. There will be a yearly increase, at least. There is a transition compensation. There is your mobility compensation. There is your working from home compensation. So there are a lot of things that you need to take into consideration, which are not always very easy to calculate for scientific staff. That's why we are there for. Otherwise, we didn't have a reason to exist, of course. So
Yeah, thanks. Does anyone have any questions about the stuff that I talked about initially, or about Fika's, or about Diana's perspectives and how they fit together? Enrique, what's your question?
Yeah, I have a question related to what you said at the beginning, Michael.
Okay.
It may sound like a stupid question, but I just want to confirm this because there was some talk on gender and diversity, and my question is basically, this is only for like big projects with many people involved, right? Like if I'm asking for a single funding for like myself, that doesn't really make much sense to talk about gender and diversity, right? It's just a big project. Like a huge project where I'm hypothetically the PI or something like that.
yes, and if you have several partners, other institutes, then there should be an equal division between men and women and gender neutral people. So you can't.
Sorry, I need to amend that. So the focus on team composition, we've moved beyond that now, and starting to think about not just gender composition, but other demographic kind of variables, not only in your team composition, but in say your management structure and your downstream, your research downstream. So if you look at the link, right, and I'll send the slides around, and you'll be able to view this. But you know, it impacts things like, even as an individual researcher, right, you might set up an advisory board to oversee your project. Who's on your advisory board? Is there anyone on your advisory board who is from your study population if you're doing interviews with people, for instance, right? I've seen people say, yeah, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do interviews with people in like Croatia and Bosnia, right? But it's, well, what language are you going to use for the interviews, and how are you going to deal with the possibility that they might not have the proficiency in English that you have, for instance, or you are doing like research outputs. You're going to write blog posts or something like that, or you're going to have seminars. You're going to put up a website. Is the website going to be accessible? Are you good? So it's really starting to impact all of the ways that, you know, an understanding of diverse human populations and how they touch various aspects of a research process and research outputs. And it's clear that competitive proposals, right, involve articulating more of these aspects. So the guide that I've written is not just about make sure to talk about these other populations, but where do you put that stuff in a proposal if you get a place for it? So the European Commission and I think I've seen it on NVO proposals, there is a specific diversity section, right? But you're not only constrained to talking about diversity in that section, right? You can put it in the general proposal. So the guide that I gave was about where else you can put that. But great question. Yeah. Was there anything else? If there's not anything else, let me just say, so Lisette will pass around send out an evaluation form after this, and since this is the first time that I'm doing these trainings in the Faculty of Law, it really helps me understand what I might need to change and address in the future. So please help us out by filling out the evaluations. Next week's presentation will be on specifically aspects of writing the proposal from the perspective of the, nitty-gritty linguistic style that you need to keep in mind. And then the fourth session will be